So when we're considering adding color to our leaves, one of the things that we want to do is utilize oil pastel's capacity to be added in layers and to be blended. I'm going to select some warm colors initially. You may also need or want a white oil pastel or a gray oil pastel. And our goal in this project is to try to accurately color match our leaf photo. Now, I have here a different sketch than the sketch that I've done in the video before, and you can see my pencil lines are very light, so light in fact that depending on the angle that I'm holding it, and because the camera has certain light within it, you almost can't see my pencil lines. But they're very light, and that is helpful because when I'm looking at my photo, in reality, there are no dark brown or black or gray lines, and the lines that make up the leaf are actually often the same color as the leaf, such as this vein going up through the middle looks yellow itself. So our goal is to color match as accurately as we can. And I have this color photo that you'll have one per table of, but this image will also be projected on the screen. So let's start in one specific area and look at the relative colors there. So let's look at this corner of the leaf where we have this underside of the leaf that's folded over and showing next to this top part of the leaf that's in this corner over here. When I look at these two parts compared to each other, this part to me looks like a darker red with almost some bits of brown and orange mixed in, and this part here looks like a brighter yellow-orange with a few red veins running through it. So whatever I see in the photo is what I want to try to make my drawing look like. So that part of the leaf is right here for me. So since I'm working in layers, I'm going to pick the lightest color first, which for me is yellow, and lightly begin to add some yellow to my drawing. As I'm working, if you notice there are other colors getting on it, you might need to use a small piece of paper towel, and you can always clean off the oil pastel before you continue to work. So I'm working by adding a really light layer, which means I'm not actually really pressing down with the oil pastel at all. I'm just gently dragging it over the surface, and it's barely touching, and we can still see the white of the paper underneath, which means it's going to do a better job at blending. Since this yellow isn't quite matching the photo, I'm going to lightly start to layer some orange. Also in this spot where I see it, and since it's a relatively even blend, I'll put it in all of the places of this little section. Now, since they're blended really smoothly in there, maybe I would want to try the technique of using the paper towel to smoothly blend. Now, what can happen with this technique is it might go outside your pencil lines. So that's why it's really good to be slow and careful as you can. And then it's okay for me because that's why I'm starting light to dark. It'll be easier for my darker areas to cover up the edges and redefine them when I get to that point. So I think this color is starting to approach the right color. I don't think it's quite where I want it yet, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to demonstrating how I would get the next color in the next part of my leaf. And you'll want to work probably even more slowly and carefully than I am in the demo video so that you can do your best job. Our goal is accuracy to the best of your abilities. So I'm going to start with another color here. In this case, I'm going to start with the red. And since the oil pastels are slightly wide, it can be a little bit difficult to get them to be very sharp around the edges of our leaf. I find that the lighter you draw, the smaller of a line you can get, and the easier it is to figure out where we want an edge to be. So again, I'm working really slowly and carefully and patiently, and art takes time, especially good art. So I really want to work just a little bit at a time. So I'm not even going to do the whole leaf because I might get distracted and make part of it red that's not supposed to be red. I'm just going to work on one small area at a time. And how I'm going to define that area is I'm going to look for a contiguous shape that's about the same color. So I think if I imagine a line going about right here, this whole area is close to the same color. Right here it gets a lot lighter where it's reflecting more light, so I'm not going to do that part yet. I'm going to focus a little section at a time. Even though I see a lot of red in this section, I don't want to go in and press hard. I'm going to press really lightly so I can get more nuanced color blends and have room to work on different techniques. So this technique right now for how I'm laying down the color is sort of like scumbling. I'm not going in circles necessarily, maybe sometimes I am, but I'm just going in little lines. In this section there's also quite a bit of orange, so I could work on scumbling in a bit of orange. The slower you go, the more it gives your time, the more time it gives for your brain to process and notice details. If you're rushing, you might not see a mistake until it's too late, but if you take your time, you're better able to observe what you're doing and be conscientious and intentional. So that's some things we should do in this project and really all of our art projects. Maybe if I want to test and see how this color is looking blended, and I know I eventually don't want the white of the paper to show through, I could also work on using the tissue to blend this section. So I can fold a new point or a new part, I can cover over the tip of my finger, and then I can work on blending this section. Then I'll get a good idea at what color this orange and red are making together. It might not be dark enough in value yet, so then I would go back and layer even more of the same colors or a different color. That can be helpful to help us achieve just the right color. Something that can happen as you're going back and layering, if you have a light color that you're trying to put on a dark color, it might smooth and blend the dark color into the light color. So be careful about that. That's a reason why I often recommend to start with the lighter colors rather than the dark color. You can also choose to make parts of your leaf darker for emphasis. But if you're doing that, make sure you're being intentional about which parts you're making dark, with what colors, and how that corresponds to the photo. As I'm working on coloring matching here, I've added a bit more brown, and then I will continue to blend with more of the warm colors. It doesn't have to be blended to oblivion, because again there is natural variation in the leaf, but my goal is to make it color match, and right now my colors are a little bit more different still than the photo. I think I want it to look more like this is closer to the same color. So that's what I'm working on. Again, I'm scumbling by blending in small circles with one of the colors of this section, like an orange. If I think that's not quite matching yet, maybe I want to add more bright red. But again, be careful about how hard you press because it might deposit more of the color than you think. I always recommend pressing more lightly at first and then darker and darker as you finish building the stages and work on finalizing the color at the very end. As you're working, you could even use the technique of sgraffito to add the texture of the vein lines. Something that you could do today is use a colored pencil that matches the vein you're trying to use. So this vein is a red vein line, so I'm going to use a red pencil as my sgraffito stick and scratch through the oil pastel to add these smaller veins. Then I can accurately color match each part. Not all the veins are going to be red though. Some of the veins might be a different color, so be sure to refer back to each part as you work on it. I'm excited to see the progress you make in starting your leaves today.